So now what we're going to come into is, okay, great, I have my calorie number. What the hell am I going to do with that? You know, what kind of foods am I going to eat? Am I just counting calories and eating whatever I want? No. You want to break down the calories into carbs, fats, and proteins. Macronutrients are the things that you eat that your body uses for energy. And that ends up being carbs, fats, and proteins. So that's what people are talking about when they talk about their macros. Generally speaking, 1 gram of a carb or a protein is equal to 4 calories. And then 1 gram of fat is equal to 9 calories. So fat is much more substantial. That's why you kind of keep your fat under control. What I like to do to figure out what kind of macros I need for myself is I do, for bulking, I do at least, and for anything, you want to do at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body fat. So if you're 150 pounds, get in 150 grams of protein. You want to be able to feed that muscle and keep it strong and keep it big. So that's what I do for bulking right now. I'm doing 1 gram of protein per pound of body fat. And then I'm getting half a gram of fat per pound of body weight. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you'll do 50 grams of fat. And so I try and hit that number or about that number. Now, carbs are fluctuate after that. So if you kind of just use the carbs to fill in the rest of the calories. And then that'll end up being whatever number that ends up being. That's why a lot of, this can get really complicated, and what do? Write everything down and calculate everything throughout the day? No, that's why you have MyFitnessPal and why it's so popular out there. I'm sure there's other apps, but that's what I like to use too, and a lot of other people use. So you plug in all of your food for the day that you're going to eat the next day, or you can, I recommend, planning out a couple of different days worth of meals and just kind of playing around like that, and then you'll have your staples that you eat every day, and then you can kind of manipulate with a little variety as you want to, because you're in charge of your own meal plan. That's one cool thing about it. And you can still stay within your macros, and that's where if it fits your macros comes in. People that want to be a little bit more flexible when they diet and have a Pop-Tart or have a little bit of ice cream or have some frozen yogurt or whatever, they're able to do that because they're staying within their macros and they're not overeating. And they're not eating too much fat or too much carbs or too little carbs, so they're able to, if they're, whatever. You get my point, I hope. So if I'm going to cut, I do the same thing, except I eat still a half a gram of fat per body weight. I keep that the same pretty much. Sometimes I have to reduce it down a little bit further as I get closer to the show, because I'll be cutting more, and sometimes it just has to go a little bit lower. But that's for, a small amount of time right before the show. So I don't deem that as unhealthy. I just see it as a really short period of adjusting things, and then you go right back up to what you need, to a healthy amount of fat in your diet, because you do need a certain amount of fat. So, but most of the time that I'll be cutting, I'm going to still do a half a gram of fat per body weight, but then I up my protein so that I'm reducing the amount of carbs. I up my protein to 1.5 grams. Yeah, I think I did 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So if you're 100 pounds, you eat 150 grams. So now you're eating an extra 50 grams of protein. And then you fill in the rest of your caloric intake with carbohydrates. And then that ends up being whatever it ends up being. So make sure you're looking at the packages. Make sure that you're putting in the right macro breakdown. So if you go and you put in, like you had a bowl of Cheerios. So you go on MyFitnessPal, you put in Cheerios, you look it up, make sure you look at the nutrients and make sure it says the right amount of carbs, fats, and proteins. Sometimes I'll go in and it doesn't say anything for carbs, fats, and proteins, so then I'll have to go to different ones to make sure that it's actually in there so that you're actually logging it and it's not just logging the calories. So as you can see, this is a lot at first, and I don't want to overwhelm anybody because It may seem like a lot at first, but it's not. Once you have your number, then all it takes is figuring out your, what you're going to do day to day, figuring out the staples that you like to eat, and that's not hard to figure out. Sweet potatoes, white potatoes, rice, oatmeal, peanut butter, lean meats, so chicken, fish, or if you don't care and you want to eat, fattier meats, then that's fine. Steak, if you can afford to eat the fat and make sure you're counting the fat, then you're not going over your grams of fat. Let's see. So those are some staples. Yogurt's one of my staples. Apples, bananas, fruits. Those are all great. So when you cut is when you need to get a little bit more careful about your carbs and spread them out. That's why vegetables are really good, because they're super low in carbohydrates, so you can eat a crap ton of them, and it's not going to fill you up, but that's when you need to get your fat. I told you guys what I do for my fat, but a lot of people, when they're going super low in carbs, they'll increase their fat, and that's fine, because it helps to keep you full and sustain you longer. But you can also try and just increase your protein too instead. It just depends. It's going to depend on you and your body and what you want to do. I'm telling you what I do for my body, but this will give you, I think, a pretty good base as far as, figuring out at least the calories that you need to maintain your weight, and then you can work on the calories, and then you can play around with the proteins and the fats and the carbs and see what works for you. I do recommend doing it for at least a few weeks to see, some results, whether they're positive or negative. You have to be willing to accept those negative results sometimes. And then also, your body just doesn't, change like at this super steady, consistent pace. But work with it, be patient. It's trial and error. And I think that's the fun part. But if you're not one of those people that likes to try and figure it out yourself, then go get a trainer. Okay, so what I've been looking at, this whole time is my own blog. It's called Body Sculpting. You go over here, carissaforhealth.tumblr.com, and that's the link to this specific one. But if you go under archives, and you'll see I posted a lot. I post my YouTube videos on here too. But you go all the way down to the bottom. You go to how to start a diet plan. This was all the way June 2013. And then that will bring you to this page. And so it just basically has everything that I just talked about. How many calories you should eat per day. The calculation for the Harris-Benedict equation. There's what the number is that you'll multiply your activity with. If you want to gain weight, 200 into 500. If you want to cut it by 500 or whatever, around 20%. What foods should you eat? Talks about macronutrients, carbs, proteins, fats. It talks about, I went by percentage last time. Now I'm going more by the gram, because this was obviously a year ago. And then it talks, about all this. Examples of clean foods. So, yeah. And then I have other things too if you want to check that out. But anyway, so that is that, and I hope this helped. I hope it wasn't too crazy. If you have more specific questions that I can maybe answer, just let me know, and good luck on your diet plan.